We're live.
Excellent. We're also in the sanctuary at Greendale People's Church in the Greendale neighborhood of Worcester. And Carolina and I are greeting you today. Just want to enter into your lives, maybe with a thought that you might find helpful or interesting. So the thought pertains pretty much to the concept of brokenness. The sermon series that I'm in right now, even though I'm kind of loosely going in and out from the theme of brokenness, is something that's taking place now. So I thought I'd share a few thoughts about brokenness as a valuable aspect of life. Most people think that when something breaks, that it couldn't possibly be worse, particularly when it's some aspect of our lives, our relationships, our daily lives. Once they become interrupted and broken, people think that's a catastrophe, when in fact, that's when we are opened up to new possibilities for life and things can become interesting. So the actor, I don't even know if he's still living, Leonard Nimoy, he played Mr. Spock. He once made a statement that until a stallion is broken, it cannot reach its potential. So a stallion, a wild horse, goes about life as a wild horse, and at a certain point is broken, is changed, and life becomes different for that stallion. And he would say it's at that point that that stallion, that horse, can reach its potential. Well, I think in many ways life is like that for us. Things are the way they are. We try to avoid any interruption to life. And then life doesn't cooperate, nor do the people around us. And things become broken. And that doesn't mean that life is lost and that nothing good can come from it. It is in fact in those situations when God does God's best work. So I thought I'd give you a little philosophy lesson first. There was a philosopher last century named Heidegger, Martin Heidegger. He was German. And he had a couple of concepts about how life in general works. He said, most of life is ready to hand, ready at hand. And by that he meant, like, so for example, this pair of scissors is ready at my hand, and it can go about cutting, which is what I expect the scissors to do. I take a nice piece of paper, two pieces of paper combined, I cut them, everything is just fine. I come back again tomorrow, pick up my scissors, and I start cutting paper again, and everything's just fine, until one day I show up and the confounded things are broken. And suddenly this pair of scissors goes from being ready at my hand to present to hand. So in other words, it actually becomes present to me. I pay attention to the scissors that I otherwise was basically ignoring and taking for granted. Now suddenly this problem becomes very important in my life because something is broken and I can't go about life the way I normally would. And it is at that point when life becomes interesting and we become most alive. Before I was just like a machine, cut, 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 cut. Now suddenly something's broken, and I go from being just a machine to an actual human being. And things become interesting when things are broken. Now most stories that we can think of, or maybe we watched as children, I remember the animated movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There's a perfect example of how everything was just fine, level, steady as she goes for Snow White. No problems with life at all. She was going about being this fair maiden in the kingdom until one day when the evil queen goes to her mirror and asks, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And the mirror answers that there is a Snow White who's more fair than the queen. And then there's a problem in the kingdom. And all of life changes for Snow White. She is now being pursued with the possibility of being destroyed because the evil queen has had this interruption in her life and is now interrupting Snow White's life. And the whole story evolves into this wonderful experience for Snow White, out of the ordinary that she was stuck in. She suddenly makes 7 new friends. I can't name all 7, but I know Dopey and Sneezy and Happy and Sleepy were among those 7 dwarfs that entered into her life. And this prince eventually rescues her, all because out of a situation where life was steady as she goes, interrupted by a problem, things are broken, and now life is completely reoriented. And good music comes from it as well. Hi-ho, 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 it's home from work we go. We wouldn't have that song if there hadn't been an interruption, if her life hadn't been broken. So brokenness can bring a whole new story to life and a whole lot more depth and meaning and enjoyment and pleasure to life when things are broken. You can think about my wife would watch a movie like The First Wives Club, where these women are kind of grooming their husbands and supporting them faithfully and loyally along the way, until one day they discover that their husbands are seeking a more attractive, younger woman, and life is broken. But they band together, and they plot this scheme, and they bring about a whole new story, a new plot to their lives out of what was a brokenness and interruption. Life became present to hand. Now, what am I going to do with it? So, the value of understanding brokenness is not necessarily a bad thing, but as an opportunity for a whole new life is something that we try to remind people of in the church. The Bible is replete with stories about people who went through brokenness, and it seemed as though all was lost and everything was completely upended and destroyed. But God is in all things still working them together for good for people. How about the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors and his jealous brothers who sold him into slavery? He goes to Egypt. He's rotting away in a prison. Everything seems to be lost. But then out of all of these problems comes something good. One of his former fellow prisoners remembers that he had this knack for interpreting dreams. And before long, Joseph is raised out of the prison into the highest echelons of Egyptian society. Out of the brokenness, things being interrupted, his brother sold him into slavery, he went into prison, but out of that came good things. God does God's work. Think about the story of Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times. Life is broken. He was completely ashamed of himself, fled from the scene. Jesus eventually comes up to Peter and grants him this new opportunity, the risen Christ, to have a whole new life. And out of Peter's brokenness and having been humbled, he now becomes a strong leader of the church. The Apostle Paul is angry at these new people calling themselves Christians. Can't stand the fact that they are interrupting his history as a Jewish man. One day Jesus interrupts him and says, "Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And gives Saul this whole new purpose and mission to life. Out of that brokenness then came Paul and all the Christian churches that we read about in the New Testament and that we are a part of in this legacy now. And so, coming to church, out of the daily life, things being in a way that we try to make manageable and controllable, only to discover that life doesn't always cooperate. Our bodies break down, our relationships suffer and fall apart. Our finances that we thought were going to make us so rock solid, secure, suddenly become a little bit shaky. But it's out of that brokenness that a new story can evolve, as it did for all these characters that I'm talking about today. And why? Because God is in all things working them together for good. And God does not abandon us when things are broken. In fact, it's out of brokenness that God does God's best work. I will not bore you with all the stories of my failures in life. But out of those many failures and mistakes that have been made, God has used those as lessons for me to be a better person and a better pastor these days. I can guarantee you that your life has been filled with episodes of brokenness. But as you look back on your life, you can take a survey of it and say, Isn't it amazing that out of those many bad things that seemed so terrible at the time, good things came about. And so do not lose hope. Do not be discouraged. And that out of brokenness, there are new opportunities. And we are so much more inclined to be accepted by others when others notice that we've gone through the same kind of brokenness that they have, and it binds us together. So don't run from brokenness. Don't be afraid. Allow God to do good work. And that's what this Christian faith, and I'd like to think this church, Greendale People's Church, is all about. So thanks for letting me interrupt and breaking into your daily routine with this chat today. So God bless you all richly. Thanks very much.
Real quick, I just want to say hi to some of the people who are watching.
Yeah.
So we have here Sue, Linda, thank you for joining, Ashley, and Patricia. It's fun. Yeah, just wanted to say hi to everybody.
You know, I'm sorry to say that you can see me, I can't see you. So this is the best I can present today, but I'm glad that you're with me today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.